think I'm recording. Yes, I am recording. So this presentation is being recorded so that if people, if need be, we can have that transcript as well as some of the discussions that we have as well. There is a question and answer summary that will be, that we will we'll also make available as well based on any questions that are asked. And certainly once the people who've participated and anybody else who goes online and looks at it, this master plan is being developed over the next 6 months or so. But we would ask you if there are any comments, particularly to this presentation, to provide them by October the 19th so that we can move forward with the process and on to the various phases of the plan. So the purpose of this meeting is to introduce you to the study, to provide an overview of the study process, identify some of the issues and reasons for this study, summarize the county's water and wastewater system, and present some of the information that we found to date. So again, we do want to hear from the participants. If anybody has any observations to share, any questions that we can answer at this stage, and also with the overall master planning process in particular. So Oxford County, I'm sure most of the public participants are probably from Oxford County or familiar with it. Presently, population is approximately 121,000. There's 8 municipalities that comprise Oxford County: Blandford, Blenheim, East Zora, Tavistock, Ingersoll, Norwich, Southwest Oxford, Tillsonburg, Woodstock, and Zora. The larger urban centers are Ingersoll, Tillsonburg, and Woodstock, and they have the majority of the employment and residential growth that's anticipated to occur in the county over the next 25-year periods. And then the remaining 5 municipalities are termed township and consist of various rural populations as well as non-serviced and partially and fully serviced villages. What we mean by partially serviced would be places that will have, say, a municipal water supply but not a municipal sewage system, or vice versa. So some of the background that when we're looking at this, the master plan that we account for in terms of servicing, would be to look at the county's official plan, because the intent of our master plan is, we'll probably discuss it a bit later, but is to help the county plan what's needed in terms of water and wastewater servicing over the next 25-year period. So one of the places that we start off is looking at what the county's official plan is. So typically the plan is a 20-year horizon for countywide development, for resource management policies, land use policies, and implementation strategies. And the plan concentrates growth and development in communities containing a mix of residential, non-residential land use, and the following hierarchy of servicing options. So this hierarchy of servicing comes from the province of Ontario's preference for how land is serviced in the province, particularly if larger scale developments occur. So the first, the highest level, or the first priority in terms of development, will go to areas that would be able to be serviced from existing centralized water and wastewater treatment facilities. Their other servicing options include residential and commercial industrial development that's on individual septic and well systems, or in some cases, there are some combined systems that have multiple users in a communal-based water or wastewater system. But these are typically things that have happened in the past, and they're generally not favored now, particularly after Walkerton in 2000. Servicing is really, there's strength in numbers, I think, is how best to describe it. With regard to the county's drinking water and treatment and supply system, the county operates 17 municipal drinking water systems, and these include 34 water treatment facilities. And these are typically, you'll see them if you're driving around some of the bigger centers or the smaller centers. They're usually brick buildings that look like the one on the top right here, that provide treatment to the water that comes out of the ground. The county operates approximately 735 kilometers of distribution water mains. There are 39 water reservoirs and storage towers that provide water storage to help with demand during peak periods, or in some cases for firefighting. There's 7 water booster pumping stations. There are all of Oxford County's water supply is from groundwater wells, and all the systems are controlled electronically by SCADA, which is basically a control system that allows operators to monitor a lot of these facilities that are remote, and also too within bigger facilities, the SCADA system also allows them to, when a warning light will come on, or there'll be an alarm if something happens that needs their attention. So here's a map of the outline of the various water systems. Again, the larger water systems are in Woodstock, Ingersoll, and Tillsonburg. And then there are some others in some of the larger villages, such as Thamesford, Tavistock. There's a system that services Mount Elgin. There's a small system that services Lakeside. There's water systems in Plattsville, Drumbo, which also provides water service to Princeton. The South Oxford system services as a combined system that services Norwich, Otterville, and Springford. And Embro and Interkip are provided with water supplies from Woodstock. Or no, they're not. I'm sorry. I think that's a bit of a mistake. That's on the wastewater treatment. With regards to wastewater treatment, there are 11 municipal sewage collection systems, which include systems where sewage is collected in one community and pumped to another community. Those are Embro and Interkip, and there are associated odor control facilities that maintain keep the odor down from the transmission of sewage. There's approximately 600 kilometers of sewage. Throughout the county, there are 36 sewage pumping stations. Typically, a sewage plant is usually located in a lower area, but obviously there's always hills and communities and creeks and rivers. So a lot of times sewage is collected locally at a pumping station and then pumped up to either a gravity sewer or directly into a wastewater plant. And there are 9 wastewater treatment plants in Oxford County. Activated sludge wastewater treatment plants. These are your typical large wastewater treatment plants that you'd see in larger centers, and they're in Ingersoll, Tillsonburg, and Woodstock. There's an extended aeration wastewater treatment plant, which is somewhat similar to a conventional looking wastewater plant located in Thamesford, although it is a slightly different process. There are lagoon-based treatment systems servicing Norwich, Plattsville, and Tavistock. Mount Elgin has a sand filter-based system, and Drumbo has a system called a sequencing batch reactor, which is being converted to a newer, more modern membrane bioreactor, which is being done there because of community growth. There's one biosolid storage management facility located at the Salford solid waste site. Biosolids is essentially it's basically the bacteria that fall out when bacteria consume wastewater, and the more you feed them with the sewage, the more they eat. So you basically have to remove the solids, and essentially what it ends up looking like. It ends up looking like peat moss. It gets to about 20 or 30% dry solid content, and then it's moved to a solids treatment facility where under current regulations the county is able to use it as sell it or give it away to various other industries for use. And again, there's a SCADA control system which controls operations. So again, just looking at where everything is, the Tavistock, Plattsville, Drumbo, Norwich, Tillsonburg, Mount Elgin, Chelmsford, Ingersoll, Woodstock, and the arrows actually are on the right picture this time. They're pointing basically sewage is collected in Embro and Interkip and is pumped into the Woodstock system. And the biosolid storage facility is located next to the county's solid waste site off of Salford Road. So just to go through the process that we're looking at now, when municipalities look at planning new infrastructure, they go through what's called the class environmental assessment process, and part of that includes master planning. So essentially, what a master plan is, it's looking at all the different servicing requirements for a municipality at a high level, so that we can determine in which direction the servicing needs to go, but not necessarily looking at specific solutions for individual systems. And with Oxford County, when you're looking at 17 water systems and 11 wastewater systems that are spread across the county that are of different sizes, the master plan approach to planning helps establish some consistency in terms of goals and outcomes for the planning. So when we're looking at the overall class environmental assessment process, the intent is to make sure that municipalities consider input from the public, from First Nations. They consider environmental issues. They consider the cost benefit of various options. And recently, too, we've also added issues related to climate change and resiliency into this type of review as well. So basically, a master plan, the Class EA process goes through 5 phases, with the 5th phase being when a project is ready to be implemented, which means basically it can be designed, it can be tendered for construction and built. But to get there, usually you go through there are 4 phases. The first 2 phases are you identify the problems or opportunities that you're looking for the study to deal with. And then phase 2 is where we look at a high level alternative solutions to solve these. And then once we go through and determine what these alternative solutions are, we then determine what the individual projects are required to be implemented to address the servicing requirements in this case. So depending on what they are, some of the projects are Schedule B projects, which means they will go through again a bit of a phase 2 review in more detail. And then for some of the more complex projects, and complex projects would be things like deciding to build a new wastewater treatment plant somewhere, or bringing in a new water supply system. They're typically require a more detailed study, and they will go through phase 2 and then phase 3, which is looking in more detail at very specific design alternatives and selecting from them which is the best for the community, issuing a study report. And you can see throughout the whole process, there are different periods where consultation is made with agencies and public, where meetings occur with the public to show where we are and what the process is and what the progress is, so that we can get to get appropriate feedback. So in this case, we've sort of highlighted in red here what the master plan is going to involve, and essentially we are at this point here with we're doing our first public meeting to review the rationale behind the master plan and what we're looking at accomplishing. Once we work through the different high-level servicing solutions early next year, we will be having a second meeting similar to this to review with the public and with agencies what Oxford County has decided to do in terms of implementing a plan for their future. So the next slide I'm going to show you is sort of how we conceptualize the whole process for what happens, why we're doing this water and wastewater plan, and where it goes to. So at a high level, when we're looking at needing a master plan, there are these different, what I call project drivers. There's these things that need to be, needs that have emerged. Like for example, there's service demand. You may have communities which are not serviced, which would like to be served, or you can have development growth. So there's planned growth in the communities where we need to provide more capacity for water and wastewater to provide for new residents and new industry. Health and regulation. Oftentimes over the years, environmental regulation and other regulation get more strict, and there's a requirement to upgrade how things are treated, how we treat water for human consumption, then how we discharge of waste back to the environment. Again, there's other drivers such as sustainability. There's with climate change, there's obviously incorporating resilience for some of with the infrastructure, so it can deal with the more extreme weather conditions that we get. There could be other issues there too, where the overall community wants a higher level of service. Getting people off of their own individual wells if there's an issue with contamination in an area, and getting them on a municipal service. And then there could be a whole bunch of other things. So essentially what we're looking at trying to do in this master plan process is to identify what these drivers or these needs are, and then, you know, we'll talk about reviewing them based on sort of principles, and we'll talk about the principles in a few minutes as to what the county wants us to look at and focus on, and through that identify, you know, which projects are needed to solve the problems. And then at some points, you know, as I said, this is over 25 years. When we identify these projects, eventually, some we might think need to be implemented in the next 5 years. Some may be 15 years off. Some may be outside of the 25-year planning horizon. But in any case, we'll identify what the projects are, and then there will be other factors that the county will also be looking at in parallel to this study, such as overall infrastructure condition. For example, if we know a wastewater plant needs to be expanded, and at the same time the wastewater plant, the existing infrastructure is at the point where it needs to be replaced, that could be something that drives a project forward. Funding coordination with other projects. An example of that is in different municipalities, if a roadway is going to be expanded from, say, 2 lanes to 4 lanes, you know, instead of just going in and doing the roadway, the municipality sometimes looks and says, well, what is the age of the sewers? What are the age of the water main? If they're starting to creep up in years, or they've been breaks or issues, why not, you know, we're going to be out there anyway doing construction. Why not do construction of the different other parts at the same time to get some overall savings? So the county will sort of look at all these factors, and then going forward after this plan's over, we get in the implementation phase. So the county will basically monitor the conditions, and then at some point the need for you know, increased servicing, both from what we've identified in the master plan and from other factors, that will reach a trigger point, at which point the county will decide to implement a particular project, and then it'll go forward. So so what we're doing essentially with this master plan is we're helping the county identify this portion of the decision matrix going forward. So I've done a good bit of talking for a few minutes here, and there's lots more slides to go through, but I just wanted to stop and see if anybody had any questions. Well, I must have done a fantastic job in explaining things so far. So we will go. I think we will continue on then. Oops.
John, maybe one point we could make on the map with the air. You know, Embro and Interkip both have their own water. It's the
they do have their own water system. So I will scrub that out before we issue the final version of the. There's always something you forget on these things. So my apologies for
no
maybe I'm keeping everybody on their toes here, including myself.
No, that's good. And it's just the force main that comes into Woodstock with the odor abatement equipment. So, yep.
Okay. So when we're talking about the master plan through the Class CA process, one of the first things we do is work with the county to establish a problem and opportunity statement. I mean, when we're doing these type of planning, it's sometimes to address a problem. Other times it's to take advantage of an opportunity that's occurring. Or in most cases, you know, there's a bit of a problem, there's a bit of an opportunity that we're dealing with. So for the Oxford County Wastewater Master Plan, our statement as to why we're doing it is to comprehensively develop, evaluate, and select preferred long-term wastewater servicing strategies to support existing servicing needs and accommodate future projected population employment growth to the year 2046. So that's the overall vision of what we're doing. And then in that busy slide where we had the trigger point and all that stuff, the county has worked out what they consider some of their major goals for this study, and they are as follows: to provide water and wastewater strategies to service existing settlement areas and growth to 2046. To integrate growth management, planning, and infrastructure servicing in a manner which ensures alignment with the county's official plan and strategic initiatives. To offer infrastructure solutions that recognize potential for growth beyond the current planning horizons. And what I think that means is that when we establish new treatment facilities, wastewater or water treatment facilities, or we put large diameter sewers or water mains in the ground, they don't have they're not like your latest iPhone. They're not going to be obsolete in 5 years. In a lot of cases, the bones of this new infrastructure can last between 80 and 100 years. So when we're putting it in the ground, we have to consider, obviously addressing what in this case is a 25-year horizon, but also looking at, can this infrastructure that we're putting in be complementary to future potential growth that occurs. So that's so that, for example, if we cite an expanded wastewater treatment facility as in a community, are we giving enough room so 25 years or 20 years from now, if the community keeps expanding, they don't have to go out and search for another place to put a wastewater plant. They have sufficient space within the boundaries that we've set, so that we can keep expanding in that spot. The next point is develop infrastructure systems which meets the county's established asset level of service framework and legislative requirements from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks, the old MOE. So basically what that's saying is the county's established a certain level of service for its water and wastewater customers, and the MECP has also established, through the Safe Drinking Water Act and through the Ontario Clean Water Act, and the Environmental Protection Act, they've essentially established the requirements that have to be met in terms of water quality, and in some cases, guidelines in terms of how much water you need in certain communities that have fire protection to fight fires and the like. We also want to look at opportunities to optimize current infrastructure to realize all capacity available and consider sustainable infrastructure expansion. So again, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there is existing infrastructure that can be expanded or repurposed, again, it makes sense to do that, especially if in the past the county and the engineers who have helped them have established, have had the foresight to make sure that that expansion is possible. The other thing too is that we are also looking at terms of providing the county with a capital implementation roadmap. So we're looking at 3 horizon periods, basically from year 1 to 5, from years 6 to 10, and then from basically 11 to 25, so that the county will be able to have an idea as to the cash flow or the expected timing, of some of the major infrastructure projects that they're going to have, occurring going forward. Some of our other goals in our in this master plan, obviously, is to provide for reliability, redundancy, and security of the systems, including consideration for reserve capacity, so that essentially, the county's probably about 5 years or more ahead of anticipated servicing demand and development, so that they don't have to be putting a freeze on development, or because I think development's obviously important for most communities, because that's what helps communities as a whole move forward, is the influx of people and economic growth. We want to optimize pumping, storage, and storage infrastructure to maintain level service under emergency conditions. And emergency conditions are things like fire. It's also high water flows, like if there's large, sometimes with sewers collection systems. The sewer collection system has been designed. There's been pipes in the ground for 100 years, and sometimes they're leaky. So when there's an event in the spring where you got heavy rain and snow melt, you get a lot of water coming through the wastewater plant. You usually have to have a plan to either treat or partially treat this extra flow to help with the to protect the environment. And certainly the other thing too is we're also looking at recommending proven, reliable, financially and sustainable technologies that meet long-term servicing requirements. So, while it's always good to look at innovative solutions, with things like infrastructure, where we're looking at putting systems in place that are, that have to provide, proper wastewater treatment or proper drinking water treatment, from now until they're decommissioned, which could be, 50 or 100 years from now. We want to make sure we're using technologies that we know that will work, and the like. And obviously there's evolution over time in terms of technology, but my goal is never to be the first one in Ontario to use something new on a client, because we don't want to be the guinea pigs, nor do we want our clients to be the guinea pigs. We also want to recognize water conservation efficiency measures to support environmental sustainability. And again, environmental sustainability is important, particularly with some of the goals that Oxford County has enunciated, strategic goals through their council in the past 5 or so years. And then obviously when we're looking at recommending different servicing options, we have to look at what the costs are for operating and maintaining the infrastructure, because as I said, once you build infrastructure, it tends to be in the ground, forever. And a lot of the equipment that we put in is going to have at least a 20-year life cycle. So we have to make sure that, we're not necessarily getting, the cheapest solution to build, because in a lot of cases, the cost of operating it will be multiple times the cost of building the system, going into the future. So life cycle costing is an important consideration. So basically, when we're looking at, all the inputs that are going to go into this master plan for the project team for Oxford County and for RVA who's assisting them, we are talking to provincial agencies, departments. We're reviewing regulatory requirements for both provincial, federal. The county has established an internal and external technical advisory committees. The internal technical advisory committees include staff that are outside of the public works group who are in charge of this group, to make sure that planning and other agencies within the county understand what's going on and can provide their input. The external technical advisory committees will include representatives from member municipalities, local conservation areas. Again, I think I'm moving down here to local elected agencies. Indigenous groups, we are in contact with them. to let them know what's going on. And we've met with one group just to outline how the general direction of this master plan. Utilities, gas, hydro, and other providers. In a lot of cases, the county shares the right of ways with a lot of utilities, so they've been brought in and let know what's going on. And certainly, through the public consultation, residents and general public, we do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to understand what we're doing and to review and provide their comments as this process proceeds. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is the natural environment, sort of at a high level with Oxford County, because certainly, we have to take into account the natural environment when we're looking at infrastructure to make sure what we're doing is complementary to maintaining and potentially enhancing the natural environment. So just here are just sort of a couple of slides, just giving an overview of what we're looking at in terms of Oxford County in the natural environment. So within Oxford County, it's dominated by agricultural lands, interspersed obviously with settlement, some open space areas, and environmental protection areas. So so again, if you look at there's very little urban area compared to the overall footprint of the natural environment in Oxford County. Certainly, we Schedule C of the Oxford County official plan shows the extent of environmental features, including locally and provincially significant features. We've also, obviously, land use in Oxford County has been categorized into township and urban centers. Oxford County contains portions of 4 conservation area watersheds. So basically, Oxford County drains to 4 different drainage areas: the Upper Thames River in the north and the west portion, the Grand River in the north and the east portion, Long Point region in the south, and Catfish Creek in the extreme southwest. And again, these watersheds can be divided into 15 more sub-watershed areas. So when we were looking at the percentage of land cover by area, there's pretty well every most of the municipalities do have significant wetlands, woodlands, areas of natural, ANSI is areas of natural and scientific interest. So life science, I believe, is things that are alive, and earth science is probably things that are not alive, like rocks or minerals, I guess. And then there's also significant valley land. So there's quite a variation in distribution of various natural areas, and part of our consideration is we want to make sure that we're not necessarily having infrastructure come into conflict with these areas. So again, this is from the C1 schedule from the official plan. Again, you'd probably have to be a fighter pilot to make out all the little different things, but essentially everything that's a color is of some sort of environmental feature. So you can certainly see in these brown lines here, these are the drainage boundaries of the watersheds. You can see that there are rivers, ribbons of rivers and creeks that go through the area. There's on Blandford Blenheim has a significant amount of wetland area. So there's quite a bit of things going on. And again, in the south, same idea. You can actually see the 4 watersheds conservation areas. This is the Grand River, this is Upper Thames, this is Long Point, and this is Catfish Creek. So that's just to give you a quick overview that there are a lot of things going on. And when we are looking at infrastructure, which are generally in the villages and in the urban areas, we are taking into account the fact that, we want to stay as much as possible out of environmental significant areas. Just to give you an idea as to the work that has been done to date, we started this project with a startup meeting with the county back in January of this year. For the first few months, we undertook a background review to confirm system demands and to look at what's been done to date in terms of studies, in terms of information available. We issued a notice of study commencement, or the county did, in March of 2022. And then from there, we have collected feedback and reviewed it that has been provided to date from agencies, the public, and First Nations. And, certainly one of the key drivers that we're looking at to determine, the requirement for servicing is population growth. So when we look at the population growth for the various municipalities, it's there is potential growth. I think we've got a mistake here with Ingersoll. Ingersoll is not staying the same. Ingersoll is increasing, but generally you can see all these centers to a certain extent are expected to grow. I mean, certainly there is going to be probably significant growth in overall numbers in the three bigger centers, and then some of the smaller centers. There is forecast a lot of growth. In Tavistock, Innerkip, Embro, Mount Elgin, Norwich, Plattsville, and Drumble. So there is. I think it's a good news story for the county, is that it's obviously a great place to live, and people are coming to Oxford County. So we have to be able to provide them with the requisite servicing. So to start off and looking at the servicing, we've done an initial assessment of the water systems, and we're still in the process of confirming a lot of our results. But we did, when we're looking in detail at the wells, the treatment systems, the pumping stations, storage reservoirs, and the towers, we've looked at things like what the current water system demands are up to 2021, and also what the capacity limits of the various systems are. Obviously, there's been some recent and ongoing studies that are on some of these systems, and we've been reviewing them. We've been looking at potential changes in regulation of drinking water. Over time, there is sometimes some standards become more strict, which require higher levels of treatment. We've also looked at how the systems presently operate. We did, for the water and wastewater, we did visit all the facilities with their lead operators to sort of get a feel for how they work and what some of the issues are. We looked at the current production capacity of the wells, the treatment capacity of the treatment facilities, the capacity of pumping stations, and then also the current storage capacity of the water storage facilities. And again, taking into account things like the current physical state of the infrastructure, its location, the potential constraints. I mean, some systems have the potential to be expanded if they needed to be expanded to. Other ones are, essentially landlocked. And what are the opportunities, both in terms of, of expansion and potential other areas that might need to be serviced. And wastewater sort of followed the same sort of review. With wastewater, we're looking at sewage pumping stations, wastewater treatment facilities, odor control systems, and the biosolid storage facility. And again, looked at the current wastewater flows, the capacity limits of the different facilities, with the current and recent studies and the infrastructure projects that are ongoing, potential changes in wastewater regulation, how the systems presently operate, the current treatment capacity of the wastewater systems, the capacity for pumping stations and odor control systems, the current biosolids production rate at the various facilities. And again, the current physical state, location, and potential constraint and opportunity, the components. Those are the things we've looked at. So again, I'm just going to take a bit of a pause here and see if anybody has any questions or comments or anything like that. Okay, well, I will continue. So one aspect that we are looking at in this project that's important is climate change and sustainability. Oxford County is addressing climate change through various strategic initiatives they have, which include the 100% renewable energy plan, public works strategy roadmap, future Oxford Community Sustainability Plan. So what we wanted to do in this is, traditionally we always look at capacity and how much more you need and where you need it, and we don't, I won't say we shortchange the environment, but we only look at the environment, I guess, in the past when we had to. And I think what we wanted to do with this study is to make sure that we're giving the county a potential toolkit that they can use going forward to do their to address a lot of their action items that they have with regards to their strategic policies. So Envision is sort of how we're looking at doing that, and Envision is a framework similar to an ISO standard, or if anybody's familiar with building sustainability with LEED, except it's designed more or less to be more towards infrastructure, because infrastructure is a bit of a different beast compared to a building or to quality management or environmental management as a whole for an operation. So basically, the Envision framework has 60 sustainability categories, which are called credits, which are arranged into 5 categories. So things like quality of life, which is basically how do these projects impact the communities from a health and well-being of individuals, the larger social fabric. Leadership is another category, and that's basically the commitments that the owner, the owner of the infrastructure, and the other participants have in terms of making a commitment to the environment. Resource allocation means giving due regard to seeing if you can make better use of renewable, non-renewable resources for the project. And this can be in such things as planning, from the planning stage as to if you plan to use resources wisely versus, actually building something and using, different forms of energy or reducing energy. Natural world is the next category, and that's obviously looking at a preservation renewal of ecosystems. And essentially what it's trying to do is minimize negative impacts to the environment, to looking at if the infrastructure can interact and provide sort of a net benefit to the natural systems. And finally, climate and risks. I mean, the two main concepts here obviously is minimizing emissions. Are there ways to propose to use to do the infrastructure in a certain way that will, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and that can be both in terms of construction and in terms of operation. And then also the other aspect is resiliency. I mean, resiliency is essentially, if we built if we build some a wastewater plant or a water system, how resilient is it to provide short-term hazards or long-term future conditions? Like, for example, the recent hurricane that went through the East Coast there, or Florida. If hurricanes or heavier rain or more flooding is going to be more common going forward, then we have to look at making sure that the infrastructure that we're going to be putting in that's going to last 80 to 100 years and is going to be more exposed to this can actually deal with that better than, say, what we put in 40 years ago when we weren't concerned or didn't have the data on this. So these are the different factors, and what we're trying to do with Envision is, ultimately, if the county wishes, they could, for each individual project, they could get a certain level of certification of Envision with the project. But the idea is not necessarily to get the county a plaque or to get them a medal or something like that. I think the idea here is that if we start thinking about ways of addressing climate change and sustainability at the master plan level, then we can make recommendations that will flow down to the next level when a project, say, goes through an individual class environmental assessment, when it's planned in more detail. And then we've started the process with the county of thinking about these things. We've defined what can be done and what can be brought forward, and that can be brought forward into the planning phase, and then that then can be brought forward into the next phase, which would be the design and tendering phase, and then finally in the construction and then the operations phases. So the idea is, if we start this process early enough, we're not looking at, as I said, getting the county necessarily an Envision Platinum level certification or something like that. But if we go through the process of using this as a guideline to think about things, we'll be better off managing and dealing with climate change and sustainability through the future life cycle of the projects that we've dealt with. So just an idea of the schedule going forward, I guess, including today. I mean, today we're undertaking PCC 1, which is really to inform anybody who's interested about where the status of this project and introduce it. We are in the process of undertaking detailed water system and a wastewater system master plan, and we're looking at probably completing that by December of this year. We're looking at giving the county council a progress report in early November, and then into the new year, we'll be putting the components of the master plan together. Defining what we think needs to be done over the next 25 years, and we'll take some of our preliminary recommendations, or our preliminary recommendations, to a next public meeting, which will probably be sometime in March of next year. And then once we get that input, we'll finalize, finalize the master plan and present it to County Council for their review and comment in May. And then we're anticipating that the county will issue a completion notice for the master plan in May. And, following a 30-day review period for people to review it and provide final comments to us, it should be wrapped up by middle of next year. And as I said, with 17 water systems and 11 wastewater systems, and a population now of 120,000, and obviously growing over the next 25 years, there's definitely a lot to consider, and it'll keep us busy, and hopefully we'll get some good synergies, and we'll get some good recommendations out for the future. So that is a presentation. Thanks for listening to me for the last 58 minutes or so. Again, this material will be posted on the Speak Up Oxford site. And again, if there are any final questions or comments, let us know. If you have any comments or questions, in the future, you can certainly direct them either to Don Ford or myself, John Terrell, or both of us. And we'll certainly consider them and obviously get back to you if we need to. So thanks for listening to me. So Don, I think I'll turn it back over to you now to see if there's anybody last questions or.
Sure, that'd be good, John. I think too, maybe you can speak to the Envision. I know that it's new to us on the master plan here, but it's a well-recognized environmental sustainability and climate change program used in planning, correct, John, in other places?
Yeah, it has been used. It's been used a little bit in Ontario. It's been used in the States. I believe it's through, I think it's through Harvard. It's come about. And the goal here, as I said, is not necessarily to get a plaque on the wall, at the county headquarters or anything like that, but it's to actually, put rubber to the road when the county has a lot of strategic initiatives that we want to reduce climate change. We want to reduce greenhouse gases. We want to be carbon neutral by 2050 or whatever. How do you do that? I mean, it's 2022 now. That's only 28 years away. So that's, maybe we won't be around to do it, but our kids or our grandkids will probably be stuck with it if we haven't got done anything substantive. And I think the idea is that Envision is a way to go through a structured system of asking questions. Are you considering using materials? How much greenhouse gases that can be, for example, if sometimes a local solution can be better than a solution that's 20 kilometers away, but then sometimes it can't be because there are community concerns or there are impacts to the local environment. So it's not that it makes the solution simple, but it really gives you something to think about when you're deciding what needs to be done. And as I said, we're not coming up with any definitive ideas, but what we're doing is we're getting the process in place so that the next level of detail, which is the planning of individual projects, can use Envision. I've seen it used in the past where somebody tries to start it when you're trying to design a project, and then there's a lot of running around trying to go back and confirm that you really did what you're supposed to have done, but that was in the past and you don't know. So at least if you start it from the beginning when you're supposed to, it actually works out and it flows properly.
Well, that's good. So we're doing it at the right point in the master plan.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be happy to take any other questions, any other thoughts on the master plan. Oh, Andrew, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I was just I just had a couple questions slash things I was wanting to input. Basically, just what ideas that I was thinking might just talking to people in the community might be relevant for the master plan.
Okay.
Just having to do mostly with surface water and groundwater protection. I've seen that there's a lot of people out there in the community who are very well, there's a lot of people out there currently getting more involved in outdoor recreation, specifically using the waterways within the county here. So basically just protection of the surface water and making sure that the wastewater treatment plants are putting out clean effluent, making sure that for the future as well, we design plants that are basically have enough treatment capacity, not just for community, but for stormwater events as well. So preventing bypass events and stuff like that. Just things like that as well. I've seen a couple bypass events happen, like just within the community itself, and you know, generally it raises a bit of a stink with people, and nobody likes that. So just things like that, as well as I see that the plant in Drumbo is being upgraded from an SBR to a bioreactor.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. It'd be great if we could get more bioreactors and membrane reactors out there as well. And if anybody's ever heard of the UV advanced oxidation process, it's a great technology being used basically for wastewater treatment on the effluent side to remove basically pharmaceuticals, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. So just something to consider as well. Basically, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and again, we are taking a look at some of the emerging contaminants, because that certainly is a the potential issue that you know, going forward we have to address. And yeah, no, Drumbo was Drumbo is getting you know, top of the line new system there. So again, just again, when because it needs it based on where it's discharging. And you know, the one thing with surface water bypass events and that is that, I mean, they're a product of what decisions that were made 100 years ago or 50 years ago, and you know, and I think all municipalities are under the gun to a certain extent to address them. And you know, certainly we'll look at that. It's not, it's you know, it's a bit of a complex thing. I just finished working on the St. Thomas pollution prevention plan, and I mean, there's, you know, there are a lot of recommendations that went into that, and there's a lot of money to be spent. But you know, the idea is to make sure that it's you know, it's done, it's the best, I think, the big bang for the buck. And yeah, no one likes discharges. I mean, that's yeah, that's not a fun thing. I mean, even the Great Lakes, there's a lot of times you can't go down to you know, Port Stanley or Grand Bend because of, you know, right after a big rainstorm too. So
I actually worked out in Grand Bend there for a while with the at the wastewater treatment plant there, and yeah, I completely understand what you guys are saying.
yeah.
I was just going to say in that way. I know that there's some like stormwater retention tanks and stuff like that. I've seen quite a few wastewater plants installing those as well. Great idea as well for surcharges and stuff like that if the current system is not able to handle enough of the incoming influent at that time.
Yeah. No, thanks,
And,
Andrew. Yeah.
No, thank you, guys, for taking my suggestions. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Good comments, and we'll add those. Infiltration and inflow is a big concern in some of our systems. So any other comments from anyone? Yes, Phil, please.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, more generic in nature. I know the county is also looking at updating their design guidelines, essentially in parallel with the master servicing plan. Is there, and I don't know if you can answer this question yet, is there any sense as to whether the master servicing plan would make use of the current design criteria, or is there some consideration for working with the consultant that will be doing the design guideline updates and ensuring that there's a consistent design specifications for looking at these upgrades that may be needed?
That's an excellent point. However, I think the timeline we're on is such to feed into the next development charges study for the county. And this master planning process is to feed into that. So it has a very sort of strict schedule to it. Now, the specifications you speak of, its schedule is on a different track, and it's going to be quite comprehensive. However, when it's completed, this won't be the last master planning exercise. So it'll be this exercise will be looked at again before the next DC study. So we'd be using the current specs for this, John, right? You haven't been speaking to anyone on the.
No, I mean, there's like, to be perfectly honest, we're looking at a lot of historical data, because each community tends to have, I mean, its own profile when it comes to generation of sewage, depending on, or what our water demand, like I think a lot of the criteria that you use for development is really designed for sizing the horizontal systems, like the water supply and the storm and the sanitary, so that you capture what you need to capture for some of the more extreme issues. When we're looking at master plan, we're looking sometimes we're looking at the maximum day a year, sometimes we're looking at average days. It depends. So and each community can vary a bit, and and I think with COVID didn't really help, throwing in a bit of a strange year or two with a bunch of people sitting at home instead of going to work. So we're I think Don said it the right way. This is always a work in progress. Like if the county's going to be reviewing the master plan ahead of every development charges study, that's actually good. So every we'll probably fix a bunch of things right now in our master plan, and then there'll be a few things by 5 years from now, before the next DC study, when the next master plan goes, they'll probably be saying, well, that last one was great, but it didn't do this, this, and this, and then that's what the next one will be doing. So I think it's going to be a very there's different, like with standards and high level planning are not necessarily, we're not looking at the same bunch of numbers. We're looking at things, from a bit of a different perspective. Right.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah.
And I do agree there can be some variation. And I will assume that the whatever specifications or historical data that's being used will be clearly spelled out in that report, so we can kind of have a quick look at it and just make sure that it's consistent with be it growth areas or infill areas that are around the different urban centers. So, okay, so thank you for that answer. The second question, and I apologize, I was a little bit distracted at one point. The meeting for the presentation to council in November, is that meeting going to present the proposed alternative solutions, or is that too early for that type of presentation?
It's probably a bit early. I think it's just an update with maybe a bit more detail. We had some numbers in terms of population projections that we had in our report here. We'll sort of see. We want to give you the right information, and to council the right information. So we know we got to get it right by March, but maybe in November it may more just be maybe a bit of an update on this. It really depends on some of the work we're doing in the next few weeks, I think, with the county.
Okay, perfect. And acknowledge, I mean, that's realistically, that's not even a little bit of a month away from now. So I can appreciate that. So yeah. Otherwise, I want to say thank you for the presentation, very informative. And those were the 2 questions I had. So thank you to both Don and John for this.
Certainly, thank you. Very important questions. Any other questions from? If not, this information will be on the website, and both John and myself can be reached at the contact information. So if nothing else, then I guess, John, I'll pass it back to you and you can close it up.
Yeah, well, okay. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's made the effort to come. I mean, sometimes this information can be a little bit dry, but I mean, it's good. We had a little bit of good discussion there. You know, the idea is that we've asked for initial thoughts by October the 19th, but obviously this process is going on really until June. So as more information comes out, if you have any questions, you know, if I can answer them, I'll answer them. If I can't answer them, they get sent to Don, and then you know, we go from there. But you know, I've worked with Oxford County for 20 years, and I mean, it's a great community to work in, and you know, I'm sure you know, I probably should have bought a house there instead of London, but that's okay. We'll you know, can't be perfect in life all the time. But thank you very much for. Thanks a lot for showing up and attending. And again, we are here to answer questions. Take care.